All right, let's dive straight into this explainer. We're about to completely transform how you approach every single conflict in your life, using some incredibly powerful field-tested secrets from a former top FBI hostage negotiator. Look, this isn't your standard, dry corporate negotiation training. We are looking at human psychology in its absolute rawest form. Because here's the wild part. The author, Chris Voss, spent over 20 years negotiating literal life-and-death situations for the FBI, but he realized something totally unexpected. The exact same tactics he used to talk down armed kidnappers apply perfectly to buying a car, negotiating a house price, or getting that pay raise. It turns out the fundamentals of human negotiation are completely universal.
I mean, seriously, imagine picking up the phone to a ransom demand for a loved one. That kind of situation completely bypasses all logic, right? It plunges you straight into an emotional crisis. Well, Voss argues that this is exactly how we should view all negotiations. Even sitting in a stuffy boardroom, people aren't perfectly rational machines. We're emotional beings, and our final decisions are almost always driven by emotion and irrationality.
Section 1. Life is a negotiation. So traditional negotiation, we're usually taught it's this brutal wrestling match of logic where you're just battling for a win. But the FBI approach completely flips the script. Negotiation is actually a process of discovery. Your goal isn't to defeat the person across the table, it's to uncover hidden information because, as we just established, their decisions are emotionally driven. When you slow the process down and truly listen, you make them feel safe and the conversation just begins to flow.
Section 2. Mastering tactical empathy.
Now, empathy, it really isn't about just being nice. And no, you absolutely don't have to agree with the other side. Tactical empathy is a highly calculated tool. It's about demonstrating that you truly understand their dreams, their feelings, and the tricky position they're in. By doing this, you make the other party feel safe enough to reveal what actually motivates them. And that gives you the keys to influence their behavior.
And how do you actually deploy this? Well, mostly through your tone. For everyday flow, use a positive, playful voice. Keep it relaxed, smiling, and amicable. But when you need to make a firm point or calm a really tense situation, you drop into what Voss calls the late-night FM DJ voice. You know the one. You keep your voice calm, slow, and warm, using a downward inflection. It instantly projects authority and trustworthiness, and it naturally brings the emotional temperature of the room way down.
Okay, let's look at how to apply this mirroring technique right now. Picture this. Your boss aggressively demands you redo an entire project by 5 p.m. Instead of arguing, you use your late-night FM DJ voice. Start with, "I'm sorry," and then just repeat their last few words as an inquisitive mirror. "I'm sorry, redo everything by today," and then you pause. Silence is your best friend here. This simple reflection prompts your boss to explain themselves, and very often, they'll end up negotiating against their own aggressive deadline without you ever having to say that's impossible.
But what if you know they're already fuming before you even walk in? That's when you use what Voss calls an accusation audit. You literally list out every single bad thing they could possibly say about you, and you label those fears up front. You might say, "You probably feel like I'm treating you completely unfairly right now." By stating the worst possible things out loud before they even get the chance to, you completely diffuse the negative emotions and tear down the barriers to real communication.
Section 3. The power of no.
We are all so conditioned to desperately chase that yes, right? But that's actually the exact wrong approach. Like Mark Cuban says, no is not the end of a negotiation. It is the beginning. Pushing someone for a quick yes makes them incredibly defensive. People often just say yes to make you go away. But inviting them to say no actually satisfies their primal human need to feel safe and in control. Once they've protected themselves by saying no, they relax and become so much more open to exploring real options.
You can actually use this strategically. Like, if someone is just totally ghosting your emails, provoke a no with a single one-line question. Have you given up on this deal? Nobody likes the feeling of being abandoned or looking like a quitter. This no-oriented question almost universally guarantees a lightning-fast response because they'll rush to correct you and say, no, we haven't given up. We've just been super busy. Boom, the conversation is back on.
Now, the absolute ultimate goal of all this listening isn't just to nod along. You want to summarize their feelings and position so perfectly that they look at you and say, "That's right." That phrase right there signals a total behavioral breakthrough. They feel completely understood. But do not confuse this with "you're right." If they say "you're right," it's a disaster. It means they've stopped listening, they don't really agree, and they honestly just want you to shut up and go away.
Section 4. Bending their reality.
Once you've established that safety, you need to completely toss out the idea of splitting the difference. The whole title of the book comes from this exact concept. Meeting in the middle often just results in a terrible outcome for everyone involved. As Voss constantly reminds us, no deal is vastly better than a bad deal. You have to find leverage rather than just lazily settling for the middle ground. Think about the number, $4,751. That isn't random at all. This is the exact, unrounded ransom amount Voss once negotiated a kidnapper down to from an initial demand of $150,000. He even threw in a portable CD stereo for good measure. This incredible result just goes to show the massive psychological power of using highly specific, calculated numbers.
So how do you actually pull that off? You use reality-bending tactics. You establish an extreme anchor early on to set low expectations. If you are forced to make the first offer, give a high range to influence their perception. And most importantly, use those odd, precise numbers. A round number like 40,000 feels like a vague estimate that's wide open to bargaining. But an odd number like 38,257 feels like a carefully calculated, absolute bottom line. It dramatically bends their reality of what is even possible to push for.
Section 5. The illusion of control.
All right, the real secret to gaining the upper hand. Let the other side feel like they're winning. You want to coax them, not defeat them. And you do this by shifting confrontations into joint problem-solving sessions, using what are called calibrated questions. These are basically open-ended questions designed to gently say no while making the other person think they're completely in charge of solving the problem.
And this brings us to perhaps the most powerful phrase in this entire explainer. When faced with an absolutely impossible demand, instead of aggressively pushing back, you just calmly ask, "How am I supposed to do that?" This forces your counterpart to pause, mentally look at the constraints you're facing, and essentially negotiate against themselves on your behalf. They are solving your problem, but they feel like they are totally in control of the process.
Notice the architecture of these questions. You're always starting with how or what, but there's a strict rule here. Avoid the word why. Asking why did you do that inherently sounds accusatory and puts people instantly on the defensive. By sticking to what and how and maintaining that calm tone, you keep ego entirely out of the room. You let the counterpart feel victorious while they are actually laying out the exact solution you wanted all along. So as we pull the whole shebang together, look back at the core message of Chris Voss's work. Whether you're literally trying to rescue a hostage, closing a massive corporate merger, or just asking your boss for a raise, remember the negotiation is not a battle. It is a process of discovery. It's built entirely on tactical empathy, structured listening, and making the other side feel incredibly understood and in control.
It's a huge paradigm shift. When you stop fighting for your side and start uncovering their reality, everything changes. And that leaves us with a final thought for your very next interaction. When you step into that room, are you going to muscle your way to a hollow defensive yes? Or are you going to step back, listen, and unlock the incredible collaborative power of no?